But we can start maybe 12:20 Brazil time, and then
We can see that the ready to cook packaged foods like the instant soups, instant noodle, pasta, the consumption was around 10% on the previous day. Next slide. And as the frequency of consumption reduced, we found more and more people documenting about the ready to cook processed food. So in the conclusion, I would say that most of the people were consuming a lot of ready to eat commercially available ultra processed foods. Next slide. So if we look at the score, majority of the population, if you can see, were in the score range of 2 to 4. That means this is a now simple calculation of number of foods eaten. So we found that at least 2 to 4 of ultra processed food was consumed on the previous day by more than around 50% of the population. The maximum score was 24. The mean was 3 plus minus 2 standard deviations, and the median was 2.5 in the range of 0 to 12. We had people who had consumed as many as 12 ultra processed foods during the previous day, and most of them consumed the ready to eat UPFs, and the prevalence of high consumption of UPFs was linearly decreasing with the increasing age. So we sort of looked at the fifths of the dietary share of UPFs in terms of calorie consumption from UPFs and compared it with a fifth of the Nova-UPF scores. In other words, if you see on the left-hand side, these are the quintiles of the percentage calorie consumption. The highest was the fifth quintile had 25% or more calorie coming from UPF. On the other hand, on the x-axis, you can see all the scores, that is 0 to 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So as the score increased, the percentage calorie consumption from UPF was also coming higher. So for a person with a score of 5 or more, and if 19% of the population were in this range, out of those 19%, those who were scoring 5 had a calorie consumption of above 25% of total energy from UPF. On the other hand, if somebody had a score of 1, then majority, that is, if 30% of the people had a score of 1, majority of them fell in the first quintile, that is, they consumed less than 6.2% of their calorie from UPF. So the payback index, which is prevalence adjusted, bias adjusted kappa, was very strong, was in strong agreement, which was around 0.85. So we could say that our score, which is a very simple tool, and as my colleague Carol said, that it takes just 2 minutes to do the scoring, but it is giving us a very important insight that if your score is going up, your calorie consumption is also going up, irrespective of the amount that you are consuming, or you don't need to do a 24-hour dietary recall, but as a screener, you can use this tool very efficiently. Next slide. So for the dissemination purpose, well, we are all part of an ANH Academy as members. We are submitting papers. We have one of the paper is ready, wherein we are mapping the ultra processed food consumption in India, whereas another paper, which is validation of an instrument to screen ultra processed food consumption in India, is under preparation. We have presented both in international and national conferences, and the work has been quite well appreciated. We are planning to have a press release in the coming few months. Next slide. The lessons learned. We need to adopt a food classification system for India, understanding that our population is at very high risk of non-communicable diseases. Our National Health and Family Survey is giving us some alarming figures in terms of the presence of non-communicable diseases in the country and the increase in the prevalence of the risk factors of non-communicable diseases. We need to have consumer-friendly packages labeling to identify UPFs, such as symbol-based front of pack labeling, and there has been a lot of discussions around that. We need to use simple screeners like the one which we have developed to identify the consumption pattern of UPF in India, and we need to have mass communication strategies to empower and enrich the knowledge of the consumers about the Indian food basket and the presence of UPFs in it and its health effects. And we need to have regulatory guidelines around UPFs in the Indian food environment to keep a check on their consumption. Next. What are the next steps? We have shared the screener with our National Institute of Nutrition, which is a government organization under the Indian Council of Medical Research, and they have shown us interest in incorporating this tool as a part of the national survey. The Indian researchers from the nutrition and food systems community are using the screener in academic institutions, and university students have started using it to collect regional data. We need to collect this data and develop UPF consumption pattern in India. And there is also a possibility of developing a prediction equation from UPF scores on the percentage calorie consumption once we have a good sample size to work with. We are planning to make the screener and the protocol freely available in open access and disseminate them to the websites of our study partners and Imana platform. Next. And that's it. Thank you so much. Over to you, Carol.
Thanks very much, Suparna. It was great to see this very inspiration. So over to our next presenter. Our next presenter is Dr. Salil Diom-Kebet. Mr. Salil is a biologist by training with a master's degree in human nutrition. He's currently a PhD student at the Laboratory for Research in Nutrition in Human Diet of the Sheikh Anta Diop University. His research interests include investigating the factors associated with the nutrition transition and diet-related chronic diseases in Senegal, including ultra-processed food consumption. So welcome to the session, Salil. We look forward to hear your presentation. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Carolina. And I want just to also thank you to Imana for giving us the opportunity to work in that project. So I'm gonna start my presentation. Here we have the overview of the adaptation process of Nova-UPF tool in Senegal. The adaptation was performed in 3 main steps. First virtual workshop, a market survey, and a final virtual workshop. We worked with experts from different fields: nutrition, public health, and food technology. The first virtual workshop was an opportunity for us to present the tool, to talk about the NOVA classification, and discuss the methodological approach for the adaptation. After that, individual 1 hour interviews were held with each expert in order to directly get their suggestion about the tool. Also, in order to fill the existing lot of data, we carried out a market survey to identify the current availability of food supplies in Dakar. This gave us a good overview of the situation at the national level, the availability of ultra-processed foods. By using data from the market survey and input from experts, we were able to make a proposal of adapted categories. The second workshop was held to review this proposition content and check if they were relevant to our context. Finally, we validated the content for the Senegalese context. For the phase validity, we had a sample of 25 adults. The Nova-UPF Screener in its original design is a self-administered questionnaire. But given our context, the Nova-UPF Screener for Senegal was administered by an interviewer. The questionnaire for the phase validity was designed to allow to the interviewer to personally ask how easy it was for the respondent to answer, and at the end have the respondent comment about the tool. Next, please. So there we have how it look the content of our Nova-UPF Screener in Senegal. Like the original tool, the Senegalese version includes 23 categories. And from the original version, several changes were made. These include rewarding of subcategories name, the splitting or grouping of some subcategories, and also the introduction of 3 new subcategories who are circled in red. Next. Yeah, these are the 3 subcategories we introduced. You can go next. There we have the electronic version of the tool. In addition to the category names, example of brands are given in brackets and with illustration of different type. The image we selected to illustrate the brand, but also they illustrate different type of packaging of these ultra-processed foods. Below, this illustration, we have a descriptive text of the category and lower down the answer option, yes or no. For the validation study, it was conducted in 25 randomly selected census districts of Dakar. 12 individuals were selected in each district, 6 men and 6 women. So we have a perfect balance between men and women. We had 13 individuals in one of the district, giving us a total sample of 301 individuals. Data was collected about socio-demographic characteristics, the 24 hours recall, and the Nova Screener. The Nova Screener has been validated in comparison with the 24 hours data recall. You can go next. About socio-demographic characteristics, the average age of our participants was 41 years, and majority of them were aged between 20 and 29. In terms of education, 29% had completed university and 24 secondary school. The majority had their own business and 11% were unemployed. There we have the frequency of consumption of UPF categories. The most consumed UPF categories were the category of bouillon dipping sauce by 32%, and followed by the category of salty sauce. These two categories are category of food they are added to the preparation when people are cooking. We have at the third place the category of instant milk powder or instant chocolate powder, followed by the category of margarine. And at the fifth place, the category of confectioneries and candies. Next. The remaining categories were classified as follows. We had firstly processed meat, soft drinks, then pasta spirits, and at the bottom of the table, we have the category of sweetened cereals, frozen ready-to-eat, and instant soup. We had, over the 23 categories, we have 3 categories who were not consumed by our sample: the category of jam, ice cream and popsicle, and the category of ready-to-eat meal. You can go next. About the distribution of the Nova score. The Nova score were from 0 to 8, but the most common were the score of 3 by 28%. And when we take the score of 1 to 4, they represent about 89% of the sample. So 89% had a score from 1 to 4. This figure shows that as the score increased, the energy contribution of UPF consumed by the participant was also greater. We have a direct association between the total energy from ultra-processed food and the Nova score. And we have also found that the average contribution of UPF to daily energy intake was 17.4%. Also in that table, we can see that individual in the first quintile had an energy contribution from UPF for less than 3%, while the energy contribution from UPF for peoples in the fifth quintile was more than 13%. Here we can see the distribution of individuals according to quintiles of Nova's UPF score and quintiles of energy contribution from ultra-processed foods. The PABAC index calculated was 0.84. This indicates an almost perfect agreement between the two criteria. So we have a strong relationship between the Nova score and the 24 hours recall. And we can also see on the table that the correspondence between the first quintile of energy contribution and the first quintile of Nova score, also in the two first quintile is more high than the last quintile, the fifth quintile. So we can say the Nova is more accurate for less consumption of less energy contribution from UPF. As a lesson learned from this study, first, the concept, designation, and description of ultra-processed food were new in our country. So it was essential for us to inform people about the Nova classification, about the importance of this classification, and the importance of that tool we are validating. Also, using image, product, and description of the categories made the survey easier to understand for both the interviewer and also the respondents. A second lesson we learned is the need to adapt the definition of ultra-processed food to include certain local foods. And third lesson, the involvement at an early stage of experts, national experts, and key stakeholder was important to ensure a full appropriation of the tool after its validation. Next. So as dissemination and next steps, the tool is disseminated, the findings of the tool is disseminated at national and regional level with policy decision makers, key stakeholders, and through researchers network like REPSAO and FORN in West Africa. Also, the adaptation process was shared during the last ANH week in 2022 and with other IMANA partners. The findings of that validation will be presented at the upcoming FENUS conference will be held in Dakar in November 2023. We are also planning to submit an article about the validation of the Nova screener in Senegal. As next step, also the Nova-UPF screener will make a surveillance and monitoring of UPF consumption in Senegalese population, track the implementation of the Nova tool at national level. And the Nova tool is already integrated in the national survey on anemia and its determinant factor. It's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Salou. We have a couple of more quick presentations waiting for you. Our next presenter is Dr. Philip Belmont. Dr. Philip has a PhD in complex systems and information systems. He is a researcher in public health and nutrition at the San Francisco University of Quito. His research interest includes data modeling on agricultural production, agri-food systems, and health consequences related to the nutrition transition. Thank you, Philip. The floor is yours.
Well, good morning to everyone, and well, thank you to Mana for making all this happen. We had a lot of difficulties during COVID, but in the end, I think we all did great. I will first begin showing the main steps we followed to conduct this research. We had in Ecuador already some tools available in the literature, works that has already been done using Nova classifications. We were very lucky to have secondary data about 24-hour recall, dietary recall from 2014 that helped us to classify and to identify the main ultra-processed foods already in consumption in Ecuador. So the job was quite advanced when we began this work. We had the necessity to make some data preparation about analysis of this ANH2023 survey, the National Nutritional Survey, to adapt the tool to local conditions and also to update some of the items identified. We built the survey as an online tool due to COVID limitations. We were very lucky also to have time to develop a visual atlas to make the survey more interactive. So we could have different video surveys, and that showed very good results in quantifying food quantities with using the 24-hour recall. So maybe next. So first, as I was mentioning, we used the survey, the nutritional survey, with a 24-hour dietary recall that we had already pre-classified with using the Nova classification systems, and built around a new composition table specifically done for Ecuador. We could build in this survey the frequency of consumption for the main food items in different population subgroups in different regions in the country. So we had a way to contrast the different items that are consumed in Ecuador, and we made a small analysis selecting redundant items between regions and between age groups. So in the numbers, what we found using this nutritional survey, national nutritional survey, were mainly ready-to-eat foods. That is surprising that we had almost the same patterns between the different countries. We had different products of different beverage, and mainly breads and yogurts, different desserts. And we found that those items classified in order of caloric contribution were very redundant between regions. Here it's a small comparison between a caloric contribution between Quito and the national population. So the final list of items for the screener, we retained 8 different beverages, including powered beverage, which are really important in the main foods in Ecuador. It's foods are always accompanied with juice. And next, please. And we had also different seasoned and prepared foods. Between those ones, we found some traditional foods that already have an agro-industrial version, like humitas and quimbolitos, which are maize-based cookies, and those are already present and in the consumption patterns of Ecuadorian population. Next, please. And finally, we had a small list of 7 types of snacks, including ice creams. So those items were revalidated with experts, with a group of nutritionists, after building the list of in total 27 items from secondary data. Next, please. Due to the COVID limitations, we were ready to survey on the streets people, but we had a lot of problems when COVID struck, and we decided to build a food atlas to see if we could increase the quality of quantity estimation using this atlas that is already adapted to Ecuador. So we made a compilation of different food atlas that are present in Ecuador, to estimate the quantities for the main dishes in Ecuador. And as I said, we use those as video survey. So after this pre-validation of the screener, the survey was applied to 327 adults from 18 to 64 years, and recruited only with this criterion. It was a convenience survey. Next, please. In this population, the average year was 35 years old. The population was almost balanced between men and women, with a little bit more women than men, with 55% of women. And we had a population that was mainly in a university, with a university level education. And among the frequency of items that we observed, we've seen that the caloric contribution that we could obtain from the 24-hour recall were mainly snacks and gaseous beverage. And observing the relationship between caloric contribution and score of Nova, we had a very interesting correlation between groups, with a significant difference between the lowest quintiles of Nova score and the highest quintiles of Nova score related to the caloric intake of UPF. Next, please. So using the same analysis of concordancy using PABAC score, we did observe a PABAC of 81, which is a very high level of concurrency between the two systems of measures. And we had mainly the same results we could observe in the other countries, with difficulties of identifying exactly groups with a high consumption and a high score of Nova. The score being more concentrated and more concordant when the Nova score was low. We could identify better the caloric contribution. Next, please. We tried to observe the different PABAC score among groups, the different groups of population, and we found that the level of concordancy between the two measures was very good, despite the fact that we had small subsidiary groups. For all groups of population, separating with sex, education, or age, we found a level of concurrency above 80%, almost in all cases. We developed, after this phase of analysis, a complete set of manuals and tools in Spanish and in English that are openly in open access in the electronic publication library of the university, with guidelines for the use of the screener, a fieldwork manual, also some information about Nova classification included in a photographic atlas. The screener with different formats, and finally some bibliography connects to the screener. Two side events where in two side events we presented these tools. We made some workshops to observe what were the results with the assistants in those events. And we found very similar results comparing universities and different groups of population. We also prepared a methodological paper and a paper of validation, which are currently in validation. Next, please. So for Ecuador, I would like to add some points about classification of Nova, that we already had done some classification work with food items, with different surveys and different food classification we had in Ecuador. But those classifications need some updating, and we had also some problem with the labeling, a frontal label for processed foods that has been hacked by the industry, and it's still a work under progress to alert the population about ultra-processed food and having tools to identify ultra-processed foods. Our next work will mainly focus on the reanalysis of this 24-hour recall survey and simulate this tool to validate the tool on a higher sampling group and see if it holds for different characteristics. That will be all. If you have any questions.
That's great. Thank you very much, Philip. I'm gonna now open for questions and discussions. So you are all invited to raise your hands and open your microphone, or to use the chat function. Does anyone wants to add anything or make any questions? Please feel free to raise your hands. Well, I don't think we have any questions thus far, so maybe we can go continue the presentation. I'll just summarize now the session as quickly as possible, and then I will just make a final question to Caroline. So next, please, G. Well, as you could see from our session today, our speakers highlighted a multiplicity of methodological approaches that were used to adapt and validate the Nova-UPF screener in different contexts, whether it was like due to the COVID situational factors or the needs of a particular context, for example, the lack of data on ultra-processed food consumption. But in spite of these, variations, the final screener ended up being very similar across all these contexts, as you could see during the presentations. And also, key findings from the concurrent validity analysis showed substantial to near perfect agreement between the score provided by the Nova-UPF screener and the dietary share of the ultra-processed foods obtained from the 24-hour recalls. As next steps for the MONA project, next year, we are very looking forward to publish the validation protocols and manuscripts in open access platforms as soon as possible. So you might have access to those very shortly. We also continue to adapt and validate the screener in new contexts and also keep testing the performance of the screener in national representative samples. And the team at the University of São Paulo is also trying to test the performance of a new score, which is the Nova Whole Plant Food Screener, which includes varieties of Nova unprocessed or minimally processed foods that are whole plant foods. So I'm gonna use just like the minutes that we have left to ask Dr. Caroline Costa if she can comment perhaps on this new score that we are trying to validate, and then we can wrap up the session. Thank you. Over to you, Carol.
Thank you, Fe, for the question. So Together with the Nova-UPF Screener, we also developed a screener to investigate the consumption of 33 items, as you said, of unprocessed or minimally processed wholly plant foods, the Nova-UPF screener, sorry. And this screener includes fruits, vegetables, legumes, whole grains, and nuts. So we collected data to test the performance of this screener. Also in that subsample of the Nutrinet Brazil cohort study. We have the results now published in a preprint publication, but we are submitting the paper to a peer-reviewed journal very soon. The results are quite good. We have found a linear relationship between the intervals of the Nova-UPF score and the percentage of energy intake from unprocessed or minimally processed whole plant foods, similar to that found for the Nova-UPF score. And also a substantial agreement between the intervals of the score and those from the dietary share of wholly plant, unprocessed or minimally processed foods. We also evaluated the performance of this score in predicting weight gain, as we did for the Nova-UPF score. And we found that increasing quintiles of the Nova-UPF score were inversely and linear associated to BMI gain in the same period of 15 months. So this publication, in the preprint publication, is already available. Perhaps one of the girls could. Oh yes, Fernanda put in the chat to be available to you if we have any doubts about it. I think that's it, Fer.
That's great. Thank you, Carol. Well, if you're also interested in knowing more about the screener or to validate it in your country, please get in touch with us through this email address. And once again, we would like to thank Emana for funding this project and all our partners for the hard work and collaboration over the last 2 years. And a big, huge thank you for all participants to join us today. If you have interest in learning more about the adaptation process, we hosted a side event last year during the ANH Academy Week. So you can also have more information by using their website. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure and looking forward to be in contact with all of you. Thank you.